workshop today. I don't like the word workshop. I'm gonna just be saying that we'll be talking about, how to evaluate research and how to, make sure that what we read or what we, find, especially right now, nowadays on the internet, is valid. Is it supported by evidence? Is it something that, people agree on? We live in a time where so many assumptions are being made. So many claims are being made and shared, and Facebook, which was a bless at the beginning, connecting people, has become, I call, a curse in the sense that people can put a lot of things, and the way things are being circulated and shared is causing a lot of confusion, to the point where you end actually not knowing what to make of everything you find or read about. They called it, my workshop, authenticity of research. I think authenticity also can be a different word. I mean, someone being authentic, being real, or being true to himself. So when it comes to research, we really have to think about the source. That's very important. Who is saying this information? Is the source acknowledged as to be a legitimate source? That's very important. If I find a scientific claim through a tabloid, I'm going to be suspicious. Like a tabloid magazine is not a good source. If I find a scientific claim about a study in Nature, Journal of Nature, then that's the first thing. So it's very important to do that, but nowadays, as I said, things happen very quickly. Things are being shared and moved at such a, like a mind-boggling speed that you can't even make sense what's going on. I'll give you an example about even scientific studies. There was a study that came about 3 years ago, and I read it on Facebook. I read what the study is all about, and the study said, women are smarter than men. It said, this is a title, study found women smarter than men. Now I have nothing wrong with that if it's true or not, but I'm like, okay, let me read the study. And then I was reading, where did they get this information, and then they refer to an article. So what happened is that what you read right now is someone's understanding of some study. So I always say, all right, if you can go to the source, it's much better, because that is what you need to do. So I said, you know what? My background is in clinical psychology. I did a PhD. I had to do research. That's what I do for a living. Make sure that research is is good, is valid, is reliable. I'm gonna go check. I checked the study, and there was nothing in the study that basically warrants the conclusions that they used. Women are smarter than men. Even though I have nothing against it, it could be true, but the study did not say. All the study was saying is that men tend to be, on average, more risk taker. Men tend to do things, quote unquote, the stupid, in terms of like risking their lives or doing something that, can decrease their chances of being alive. Men do these things, and they were trying to talk about it from a different perspective. How did they connect this to a man or woman smarter than man? It beats me. But then it showed me that although a study can base its premise or a news-based premise on a study, that doesn't mean that it's valid, because you're also asking a journalist who sometimes doesn't have this background to read a study and summarize it and report the results. And I think first thing we need to know, as second thing after the source, is that is like a guy or artist or journalist know what they're talking about. And that's a very important thing, because nowadays I find a lot of scientific studies being used on the internet, and if you talk to the scientists themselves, they will laugh. It's like, we did not find these things. I don't know if you guys heard about these studies lately. Scientists discovered gene for homosexuality. Science discovered gene for this. Scientists explain life in one single study, and and science. I think when it comes to authenticity of research, too many sources of information is good. We're getting into the democracy and allowing people to share information, but it's getting people confused, and it's getting people to become lazy in a sense. Okay, I read this in the internet. It's based in scientific study, and the finding says that, I have it all the time with my friend, that such and such is true. I'm like, okay, what is... So even though, assuming that the study is scientific, still who's reporting it? And how are they reporting it? That's very important. So my rule for Facebook is check the source, to make sure the source is, a reliable source. So, I mean, nowadays it's been really kind of in the atmosphere to suspect the source. I don't know, like Trump has done a good job. He said, fake news. So what do you do? Who do you trust when you read something, political or social or this or that? So you need to make sure also that you are open-minded. If you are on Facebook, I'm sure most of you hope on Facebook, based on your likes, there's an algorithm now, you tend to live in a bubble. I realized lately that I live in a bubble. I only get news feed that is basically speaks to my beliefs and the things I believe. If I am pro-Trump or I'm against Trump, I like something that Trump said, I like an article about Trump, all I'm gonna get is some things like that, So you tend to live in a bubble, and someone early said that you tend to do confirmation bias, which is basically you tend to seek information that's gonna confirm your beliefs. And the more you do that, the more you live in a bubble, the more you're gonna get information basically confirming your belief, and you feel good about yourself, because your Facebook is gonna bombard you all day, or social network, with information that confirm your belief. So that's the first thing. The second thing, suppose you found an article and you realize, why can we trust an article in a scientific magazine or journal? The reason for that is that it's very rigorous to publish something. If people who do research know that, it's just really one of the most cruel and to get something published, because they nitpick on you what's called peer review. So you do a study or basically an article, research article, and you send it to a famous paper to publish it for you. Oh my God! If you feel good about yourself, if you feel so smart and what do you say, like full of yourself, and they're gonna make you feel humble. They're gonna get back to you, and they're gonna grill you on everything. That's why earlier we talked about, this is what distinguishes science, is the peer review process. We have those guidelines, peer reviews of specialists. So you want to publish an article about computer science, people who are going to read your article at this magazine, they're going to be specialists in their fields and specialists in the area you're talking about. So it's not easy to make any unsubstantiated claim, and then they're going to look at your method, what kind of method you used, how did you evaluate your research hypothesis? Is it valid? So those are different people. So people say, okay, this is a valid question based on the research, based on the knowledge we have, this is valid, but then did you use the right way to arrive? And then did you take everything in consideration? And is there any possible alternative to your conclusions? That's what means when we say peer review and a rigorous process of research. I think you can easily, refute any source of news if it's not scientific. But scientific, it's been already vetted to the point where, I've heard researchers going to 10 or 12 or even more research journals trying to get published. They did the homework and they don't, because it's just basically, it's a very rigorous method. Now how can I tie this, into what we do today? Is that the theme is about science, and the theme is about how can we make sure that what we know is authentic, right? It's very tough, because as I said, we live in a time where people don't want to take their time to evaluate anything. I sit to watch CNN, for instance, sometimes, and I find a table with 10 people at the same time, debating one piece of information, each one getting a minute. How are you going to make your mind on something? How are you going to get different sides of the topic? You know, it's very, very difficult nowadays. We became very lazy. We want quick, give me information, you know. But that's causing a lot of problem, you know. And, you know, newspapers, magazines, you know, TVs are not helping because you want to sensationalize, you know, findings, you know. As a psychologist, I also work in an area called using neuroscience and findings from neuroscience to tie it to social and psychological phenomena. It's amazing when you look at this research how not only wrong, but it's just full of, you know, lies, you can say, if you want to say, about what scientists have discovered. Scientists have discovered the center of what makes you buy Mercedes or this or that based on neuroscience, you know, and you know, you look at this and I think it's for sensationalism, you know, and they want to sell and you know that, but science is more humble. If you go to a scientist, a scientific researcher, they say this is what we used, this is what explains, and this is the relation between this phenomena and this phenomena. So when we come to evaluating scientific research, we also think about what kind of finding it is. Is it correlational or causation? Correlation is basically what we do in social science. As a psychologist, we can only say that something is related to something else. For instance, people don't know that. People say cigarette smoking causes cancer. Do you know that that's not true as a claim? Cigarette smoking is correlated with increased chance of cancer. This is a big difference because there's no way for us to isolate all factors that could possibly contribute to cancer and make a direct relationship between smoking and cancer. All we can say is that you smoke more, you have a higher chance of getting cancer. This is called correlational. And that's very important because most research do not say causational, like this phenomena causes this phenomena. For people who are scientific here who do physics or chemistry, most of the time you can say, if you do this, you do that. But in our field, especially in field of scientific, psychological and social research, it's very difficult. And it's very important to know if you see research saying this causes this, I can tell you 90% of the time you know that it's something. People who buy Mercedes and certain preferences or certain brain areas. Go ahead.
But for smoking and cancer, it is proven that smoking causes cancer. It's not just correlation. The defense of the cigarette companies was correlation. Smoking cigarette and lung cancer is correlated. That means they said in that time because cancer causes you like to be more nervous and then you start smoking more. But the research was no, the chemicals that comes with the smoking cause cancer.
Well, again, that's the definition of, this is called experimental. If I am going to say that the chemical in cigarette causes cancer, that it means that I'm going to bring people and they are all equal in everything. And I'm going to divide them, and I'm going to say, you take the chemicals, you don't take the chemicals, and then I can prove that this caused cancer.
Yeah, I can design the study. I take, for example, 10,000 person. I follow them over the time. I see who smoked, who didn't smoke. After 10 years, I'll pretty much get the result as if I gave them the cigarette without giving them.
But that's called correlational. That's
still that's a follow-up.
Yeah, but that's still it's not an experimental study.
No, it is experimental.
In the sense that like you can say this caused this. See, it's even in like there's a correlation. You know, like they give you a number.
One it'll be that way, and coupled with a lab by injecting the chemical on the cells and causing cancer. So you ain't having after following, for example, 10,000 person, 5,000 of them smoked, 5,000 didn't smoke. The people who smoked, they had higher, they developed more cancer. And people who smoked more, they developed cancer with higher percentage. In that case, we can say it's caused.
But again, scientists don't even use these terms. Like there's a big debate because when you in order for you to say something caused something, you have to say I isolated everything and I did that, and that's unethical. We can do a study like that for many reasons. I cannot give people
You can't do it on cellular level.
You can do it in animals, animal controls. But when it comes to human beings, we cannot do that, and that's why I'm saying is that. And that's a very big debate, by the way. What constitutes a causation? Is that enough to say that caused? I think I'm more conservative. I'm defending cigarettes, by the way, and I think they're really bad for you. But I mean, even simple something like that, I take offense when people, because nowadays you read all research. It's not about cigarettes, about causation. And as someone who does research, I mean, it's like, to say something caused something, it's just a very specific set. It's very difficult to do that.
We can't do it when we stimulate part of the brain, and we whip out last 15 seconds of memory. We can say if we stimulate that part, we cause removing memory for 15 seconds.
Again,
short memory.
Again,
causation.
Again, come to the brain research, and it's getting very detailed. You have to think about when we are doing anything to the brain, we are also getting correlation. We're getting correlation between something we're doing and something in the brain. The mechanism we don't know. We don't know why. For instance, like right now, I can say when I look at the red color in my brain area is firing in this area in the occipital lobe, right?
Okay.
But is this basically anything but a correlation between this experience and this brain area?
Yeah, there is, where it depends on the design of the study. If I stimulate that part of your brain and you see red color, I'm sure that part of the brain causes you to see red color.
But see, that's the issue here. The experience itself is subjective. You say okay, I know that you're saying I see red color. First of all, I don't know that the red color you see is the same as the one I see, right? Do I know? Do we know they're the same? We agree it's red, but the experience itself.
If I do it on 20 patient, all of them say it's red color, I'll take it like that, it's red color.
I know, but it's the same experience because this is a subjective element in the brain sciences that people miss sometimes. Is that although we can have correlational studies between certain areas in the brain, the most we can say is that when people are experiencing certain emotion or certain experiences, these are the brain areas that are being activated.
Emotion is different than red color.
Even
red
colors.
Color is
even color.
No, red color is red color.
For me, as a psychologist, is the experience itself. I could never say that you are experiencing. For all I can say, you might be sitting here right now and basically saying this is a red color, but this is the zombie argument. But I couldn't tell if you really experience red because that's a very subjective experience. I think that's a whole different area we can go into it. But I'm saying is that we can open the discussion is that we have to be aware that of any claims that are being made, especially about scientific studies. Scientific studies also have something called not about being peer reviewed, but also the effect size. That's very important. People don't know that, how much of the variation this explain, right? In any phenomenon I'm studying. So they're very conservative. When you look at research studies and scientists, you see how humble. Okay, this is what we found, and they always tell you it could be this and this and this and this. It could be this and this and this. But my study. Now, what we earlier, you and me and the other talked about. What's good about scientific method is that I can come later on and say, you know what? Someone 10 years ago said that they found this result. They found this correlation, they found this causation. I'm going to replicate this study. Mm-hmm. This time I have a better technology, this time I have a better research method. This time I'm going to make sure that I do it better. And then you don't find what was claimed first, you can actually get published. I mean, it might be hard sometimes if it's a dogma in science, but most of the time, if you find something, if you couldn't replicate it, that's a cause of problems. And that's why the scientific method is the best we have to evaluate any claims, especially scientific claims, because I can go and say, can you give me your data? You're making a claim. I want to replicate your study, and that's why it should be open. And I'm saying, right? It should be like
be open.
it should be open. Some people don't give you the data, which
Most people don't.
yeah, which I don't like.
Yeah.
You know, but if I'm making a claim, a scientific claim, I should be able to say those are the data. Of course, I'm going to make sure that I don't give information about people for confidentiality while I'm studying people, but the data itself should be available. And you want to study it, go ahead. You want to repeat the study, go ahead. And that's what distinguishes sciences, because it's not only peer-reviewed, it's also replicable. Is this result replicable? Can I repeat it? You know, and then I repeated it under this condition. Is it replicable under different condition? It's really different.
I think they made that was about 25 years ago. They came out with what was supposed to be cold fusion,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody could reproduce it.
Mm-hmm.
And,
But that was
they weren't fraud. They just didn't prove it.
That was also it wasn't published in like a paper. It was like conference.
Yeah.
They published it as a conference, press conference. That
Right.
was disaster.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to those guys.
This isn't the same thing with those guys who published a relation between vaccine and autism.
Autism, yeah.
Oh.
It's a correlation, not a causation.
Yeah, except that thing with autism was an out-and-out fraud.
Yeah.
It was a fraud, yes.
Yeah, the guys with the cold fusion, they just simply didn't. They just couldn't prove what they claimed. That's basically what it was.
Yeah,
Big difference.
they did a mistake. They added more like extra source of energy. They didn't count it. That's what caused them thinking they did something.
But that's the beauty. I remember I watched the show about this scientific experiment and how the guy found it. And the guy was looking at the graph and the thing. It's like there's something off. And he recalculated something. I mean, maybe a different study, but the idea that's the beauty of science is that you see a study and you say, okay, wait a minute, there's something there. And you go and he did some things and he found that the graph, like maybe they reproduced it wrong, maybe there's something wrong, and he told them. And you know, the study was retracted, like
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
like now I follow a website and it's called retracted.com or something. It tells you every day. I get an email like this study was retracted because there are people that their job is to look into these claims and to make sure that these studies are well done with good design, with good controls, and that's very important, you know, because when you come to religious claims, you can never do that, you know, you could never. Like even if you can,
It's not falsifiable.
exactly.
Even
This,
if it is, they will kill you. Like.
That's not false.
But this beauty in science, so sometimes we leave something out of science. Like sometimes some people they claim some phenomena or they claim some, and we don't study this stuff. Like in psychology, like what Freud said about sexuality. Nobody studied this after Freud. I mean, nobody tried to prove it wrong or prove it right. Why do you think so?
Well, I don't know. I think Freud was criticized heavily.
oh yeah, who
No,
was?
it was
wrong.
all. It wasn't based on data. Nobody did a study to prove it or disapprove it. I mean, all they have this hypothesis, but nobody did something scientific. For me, science is about data. If there is no data, no science.
But I don't agree that Freud was. I mean, maybe at the beginning he was not heavily criticized, but his work has been heavily. I like Freud, and I'm not going to go into why I like him, because even though I talk about science, science is a very it's like single study, you know, method. You know, like when a single case study, there is. He had a lot of things that are outlandish. I agree with you, but he had some good insights that science had been studying recently about the unconscious. But he's been heavily
I'm
criticized.
talking about the sexuality exactly.
Sexuality itself has been like his theory of sexuality has been criticized and has been.
But nobody did a study to criticize. I mean, it's just people have other opinions. So nobody put get a sample like 1,000 people or children or something like
Well,
that. He did a real study.
Because a lot of what Freud said can be studied in a sense, because he said those are unconscious things, conflicts that happen in childhood, and that we cannot recreate. You know, like he reconstructed people's stories, and he went back in time and he said this is what happened based on the stage. So there's no way to study this like rigorously, but science does touch things that are like parapsychology. It's a field where people make claims about ESP phenomena. Well, I can move things, I can hear things. They've been studied rigorously in the last 20, 30 years. There is nothing. Like those people, I was into parapsychology. I want to believe something there. Well, scientifically speaking, like there's nothing. Like there's no indication any of these claims has been substantiated. So even this, like I love that psychology now saying, or science saying, you know what, let's study this. You say, you know, this person let's put it to test. We do a lot of studies now in parapsychology. People who claim that they can, travel in time or have a premonitions like about something that's going to happen. We've been studying this a lot lately, you know. There was 5-6 years ago, a guy came with a study and said, like, we found something. His name is, I'm missing his name. He wrote Tangled Universe. Until you do that, you cannot claim that, you know. And that's the beauty of science, you know. It's just not, I'm sure. Oh. 5 minutes only. So, again, you know, my message is in this workshop is that I've been really like, I look at the election and I'm going to tie it to political ending, and I don't know, I feel like really we have a problem when it comes to evidence nowadays. You know, I'm not sure if you guys heard, you know, at the beginning when Conway, she's a spokesperson or something, when she said alternative truth. We're getting into a place where people say there is an alternative truth. Now, I expect this from religious fundamentalist Muslims or what to say, well, there is alternative truth in the Quran, but people who are leading the Western strongest nation in the world to claim that there is an alternative truth to things, which is, remember what was the claim? He said that I had the most people ever to come witness inauguration day. People said, fine, we have the pictures from Obama, and we have the pictures from your inauguration day. It's obvious, even to scientists who do this kind of like, okay, estimations, they said like it's by far he was so much lower than anyone else. And then she came and said, well, this is alternative truth.
Alternative facts.
Facts, I'm sorry. But the facts are facts.
They don't lie.
So when you look at what's happening, it's just so scary, you know, because, you know, people can buy and eat this, right? You know, like I've talked to so many people like, oh yeah, but there's another way of looking at it. No, a fact is a fact. There was 5 million people or no, that's not debatable, you know.
Right.
Same thing was, what we call it, the, if you believe in man-made changes in the weather, you know, or like,
Climate change.
Climate change. Well, I don't know, but if I see hundreds and hundreds of scientists, or even thousands of them are saying there is climate change, who would you believe?
There was an example that said that if 97 people told you that the bridge was unsafe, and 3 people said it was safe, who are you going to listen to? You're going to drive your car over the bridge?
It makes sense, you know.
But how do you appeal to the, obviously 95% of the people don't think like scientists do. So it seems like the easier way to get to people is through this consumable, quick, wrong, false information. So how do we build a bridge to that 95% of the population who are intuitionists, who just assume things and consume things as things come, and they don't look at things critically?
Yeah.
So how do you build that bridge to that rest
That's
of
a good question, because I think that, you know, I'm going to talk about American culture. Lately, we've been like, I remember one of the things that people said about Obama, and they don't like it, he's bookish. It's one of the few countries that you can say something about a person that's against him, he's bookish. He's bookish. Obama is bookish. Anti-intellectualism.
And it's been going on almost since the day they signed the Declaration.
He's book. And what? I'd love a bookish, smart guy.
Right.
And then like, oh, I want to have a beer with him. No, I don't want to have a beer with my president. I want to be able to trust that he's going to make decisions based on evidence, based on, you know, advisors that are specialists in their fields. So this is the atmosphere. I didn't know that it's like that. I thought it's a new thing in this country where people are becoming anti-intellectual.
Oh no, this has been going on for a long time.
It's getting better, but I think there's still a large part of the population who...
But I think it's a cultural thing. I don't know, you guys from the, like, in my country, I'm from Lebanon originally, like, being a nerd, it wasn't what do you call it? It wasn't an insult. Actually, you were looked up to in school. Like, when I was in school, I was good in math and science, I remember, and people looked up to me. And I didn't feel like, oh, I'm a nerd. Like, actually, I could date girls in school because I was a nerd. I was smart.
Actually, I grew up in Lebanon.
No, seriously, no, it was like that.
You're right, you're right.
In Lebanon, like, if you are into sports, people and people like, no, this guy is serious, he's into science, he's smart, you know. I came here and I realized, what? He's nerd, or like they don't get to. So I think it's a cultural thing, you know, but we're paying for it right now by having a president who, you know, again, you know, I think we can do that by democratization of science. Wow. I don't know. I think we should be able to. I think the Congress did something where they now allow a database. You can go into their.
Now NIH is more enforcing to share your data.
Yes.
Yeah, because they pay for it anyway, so they enforce you send it back.
And you know what? This is a criticism for school, and my wife as a teacher would kill me, but I tell her about that. Okay, we're done. One thing is that schools here do not focus on STEM. And they say, oh, you can have an elective. You don't have to take math. You don't have to take this or that. No, we need to make sure that people take classes on how to evaluate science and how to be a creative thinker. Yes. I mean, I have nothing against music and sport and other studies, but we need also to have the basis. So that's one way.
If they can afford all this other crap that they're spending on, they can have math and science and music and sports and drama and all that stuff.
Which I think there's a need for them, but you cannot just completely take science out of the equation.
And the system here is built that way, is to focus students on what they want to do in a career, not necessarily give them...
But you know, kids are kids. If you give them a choice not to take a hard subject, they will take it, you know. Well, thank you guys, you know, and I know I'm not by no means an expert in that, and thank you for your input, you know. We'll have a more discussion about it. Thank you guys. Thank you. I have no shoes in me.